we are all here together to look at a question that concerns the future of our nation, but not just the future of our nation, even at a very personal level also. It depends very deeply on the satisfaction that each one of us can have. And that is probably playing a small role in shaping up the future of this country or even this whole world. Now, that is the level to which I can take the importance of what we are trying to do. And by the way, I was told that the Adyar school doesn't follow any conventional fixed rigid syllabus as yet. Now, this gives an immense possibility to explore and do the education the way that you want to do. But then if there is no fixed syllabus which can tell you what is to be done, see in the conventional syllabus, you are pretty much, you will have to decide what you have to do, prepare much in advance, and then submit it to your principal, get it approved so that on any particular day, you know exactly what you're going to do. Now, this is a result of a syllabus based approach. You need to have the syllabus ready, your lesson plans must be ready. But in a school which follows an alternative way of education, it cannot be syllabus centered anymore because syllabus is not at the center. It's the child who should be at the center, isn't it? It should be a child-centered education because what are we trying to do if not to help the child to face life, isn't it? Now, this is also part of the school's vision because it says to prepare students for life in all its dimensions. So I'm quoting the vision of your own school. So naturally, the question as teachers, as facilitators that we have to ask is, we don't have anything fixed to teach the students. And if I have to prepare something and decide to teach something to children, I would say there is one question which all of us will have to ask ourselves before we step into the classroom on any particular day. And what is that question? How relevant is what I want to teach today? Because there is no syllabus, there is no lesson plan, there is no approved, the thing, pre-prepared content which you have to simply deliver to shove it on the children. But it is left to you to prepare something and make it happen in the classroom. And therefore, this one question that how relevant is what I'm going to teach today? Because if it is not relevant to children, then we will have to step back. Whatever may be the demands by the parents or the society or anybody else, this is one question which, as part of an alternative education school, as part of a school that focuses on child-centered education, every one of us facilitators will have to ask that I prepared something, but how relevant is what I'm going to teach today? And the second one is, well, it's the second one is more important. How do I decide what I want to teach? One, how do I decide that what is relevant to the child? So that is where the school's vision comes to help because it says whatever we teach is supposed to help the students to prepare for life, isn't it? So if this is our guiding vision, can we look at what we want to teach children and approach how are we supposed to prepare something which will be relevant for children? Now, this is going to be something that we will look in the next half an hour, that if I have to teach something to the children, how do I make it relevant? Now, when we are looking at the education, your school especially is dealing with, I believe, classes up to around 6th standard, isn't it?
Yes.
So if that is so, we are looking not at higher education, which is extremely specialized, where you have to decide everything. You want to be in engineering college, then you have to focus on engineering related syllabus. If you are a medical college, then you'll have to focus on medicines related content. But you are talking about laying the foundations for a child so that he can prepare to face life in all its dimensions. So if this is so, can we all do one initial exercise? All of you have your notebook and a pen with you, or even a paper and pen with you. So we are going to start with really big questions, and we are going to directly dive deep into it. Now, whenever you want to teach something to children, there will always be some limitation in terms of the limitation of space that is available. Because if you want to do an activity which needs a big hall, you may not have a big hall. Or you might need a lot of materials. Your school may not have all the materials. So sometimes what you want to do with children will be limited by factors outside of you, not in your control. So I'm going to give you an ideal scenario. Consider that you have been given access to unlimited resources. All right. So if you have been given unlimited resources, now you will have to look at an education in a slightly larger context. Let us say the education up to 6th standard. Do you start with kindergarten or 1st standard? So can anybody tell me?
Yeah, we start with pre-KG, which is 2.5 years.
All right. So from pre-KG to 6th standard, you are pretty much looking at about 9 to 10 years of education. All right. So in these 10 years of education, suppose if you have the freedom of unlimited resources, what would you like to impart to children? List down 10 things that you would like to impart to children, which will, for example, which will prepare him to face life in all its dimensions. Not any one particular thing or two particular things. So this is the goal. The school has a vision. Well, it is meant to prepare students for life in all its dimensions. If you are given this opportunity, what will be the 10 things that you would like to impart to children? I'm going to ask you to pick up your notebook and write down. As you write down, or after you have listed out at least 10, you can even prioritize according to you. What do you think is the most important thing? Like the first one, the first 5 must. Second 5, kind of okay. And the 9th, 10th, even if it is not okay, I can kind of put up with it. So in that priority of order, list down 10 things. Now, I'm not asking about only in your subject or only in your standard. Look at the 10 years. And in its entirety of 10 years, what would you like to impart to children so that the foundation of preparedness for facing life happens? Come, you have, I'll give you 5 minutes for that. Even if you can come up with only 7 or 8 things, that is also fine, but make it count. Give it a lot of thought before you write them down. Can we have a little bit of sharing? Who would like to share the top 3 things from their list of 10? All right, so Kumud?
Yeah.
Kumudji, yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was able to get down only 8 points.
Fine.
So, what came to my mind, I've just written down. It could
Okay.
not be matching with the others' points, but
oh, it need not match with anybody else's because it is completely yours.
Okay.
So
yeah, for me,
no marks will be given for the right or wrong answer because all answers are right here.
Okay. For me, I find that children, as they grow up, they should have practical knowledge. So I've put that as the first one.
Okay.
Then the second is communication skills. How comfortable you are with people as you grow up. How comfortable you are with when you work in a any company or with others, with your colleagues or with your friends, or even with your family members. Then the third point I have given is social skills.
Soft skills or software?
No, social skills.
Social skills. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, these are my top 3 points. Then I have the other ones, but since you asked for the first 3 points, I have just.
All right. So when you say practical knowledge, it covers almost everything. There is no limit to the practical knowledge that can be depending on what one wants to do. So shall we say that the practical knowledge, before we start giving practical knowledge, we will have to narrow down the field of application or the relevancy. And in that field, we will have to introduce the practical knowledge in that particular field. Because if you are simply saying practical knowledge, it will pretty much cover everything, because there is practical knowledge in everything that we do. So can you narrow it down? For example, practical knowledge, I would say, in order to live all by himself. In COVID times, we have suddenly become conscious of it. Like, my mother has never taught me how to wash my clothes, how to cook, you see, how to even sweep the room.
Yeah.
She said, you are a boy, you are out of everything. And I have a sister also, so sister is given preference, but that was once upon a time. Now everybody has realized. So can you narrow down the field of practical knowledge? Or if you say practical knowledge if you go to any of the subject matters, then it actually stretches to infinity.
I would say practical knowledge, as you said, to exist by yourself without any outside. Suppose you have to go out, you have to stay out on your own. How do you manage? How do you manage? It will not. It is not a lesson in itself. It will take some, maybe years before practical knowledge will be inculcated.
Yes.
It is. I feel it's an important part or important aspect of.
Yes. So can I say that it is a practical knowledge of self-care under different circumstances in one's home, outside, etc. Because we are not talking about how to take care of people who are unwell, in serious ill, or people who need something. We are not talking about it, but we are talking about self-care, taking care of oneself So we narrow it down, which means that we need to have a knowledge of ourselves and decide what are the practical things that are applicable to me. And then that knowledge has to be given to me. Then it will be relevant to me. All right.
Yes.
Communication skills. So there are two things. One is the content of what we communicate and the way we communicate. The way we communicate will be language and when to raise our voice, when voice modulation, and then looking at people, and then all the other things, which are practically skills. The other one is, what is it that you want to communicate? So when you say communication skills, which one do you mean? Is it the language?
I mean the second one, where you judge the situation and then you kind of go in. So
all right. So the language skills that you pick up, or the content of the substance of what one wants to communicate. See, one can do even communicate stupid things, but in a high language, following all the protocols, because one knows as part of one's communication skills, what type of voice one has to modulate. But sometimes when you hear people, the content will be something so irrelevant and jarring that it wouldn't even make sense, but they are delivering it with a lot of communication skills. So which one would you now? Can you narrow it down? Is the substance matters or this one? Or if both are needed, which one is the prioritization?
The substance one. I would say the substance one.
Now, here is the thing. So you need to have something important, relevant, something which is well thought out content. And then you have to discover the way in which you have to communicate. Otherwise, you will be saying things that are not relevant, really stupid, in a high and bombastic language. Some people are so good at talking, and for 1 hour, they will be in a flow of a speech with a lot of examples and lot of entertainment. And finally, at the end of 1 hour, you say, what is it that they have communicated? Well, you can't remember even 1-2 valid points. And this also, how do we get the content? Completely depends on ourselves. So I just wanted to highlight. So the practical knowledge is the knowledge which is self-care. And the communication skills is being able to think out content which is worth communicating. And then the communication skills. And then finally, the social skills. So even in the social skills, how much is dependent on one and how much is dependent on other people? What type of social skills do you mean? Just give 1 or 2 examples so that we are clear of.
Let's suppose if you are working in a company, I've seen cases where a person is able to do the job on his or on her own, but when you put him in a team, he is not able to contribute much. So I feel this is also vital, because as you go along, you will be dealing with a lot of people in your day-to-day life. So how do you be with them and add to the productivity of the company or any group or anything? So I think that's important.
So the capacity to be warm, to be caring, show a lot of concerns, to include everybody. And these are the things that are part of this one.
Yeah, you don't think that you are a very important part of but you are a cohesive unit.
All right.
Yeah, that's
all right. So this is excellent list, and I'm sure the remaining 7 or 5, 6 also will be fine. So I would like to have one more sharing. Let's see who would like to share the top 3 points from your list of 10. Anybody could volunteer? There are no right, wrong answers. Nobody is going to give you marks. So Subha, Resha,
yes. The first thing which came to my mind was yoga and meditation, which is important for the self. Anyone, the basic thing. So I thought that children should be taught to live stress-free, because today's world, everyone is facing stress, even the children. So meditation is one thing. So yoga and meditation was my first thing. Then I said the self-sufficiency, like what you were saying, the survival skills for growing food in their own, importance of nature. So they should be able to provide themselves with the basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter. The basic thing, how will they survive on this planet Earth?
So we will put it as self-care, being able to take care of oneself.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a sustainable way.
Okay. In a sustainable way.
Yes, sustainable living has to be absolutely taught to the children. The third one was the reduce of wastage, waste segregation, the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle. So this has to be taught to the future generation, because the older generation, I think no one knows. I mean, many of them don't know what they are doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very valid point. So yoga and meditation, and very deep subject, and our country is known for it, and it has developed it as a science, but it's not yet been there part of many of the syllabus and curriculum. Then self-care in a sustainable way is the second point by Subha. And then the reduce of wastage. Sometimes, in many times, what we consider our as wastage is nothing but the things that are not utilized properly. We don't know how to utilize them, and therefore it is labeled as a waste. It adds to the pollution level of our planet too. So I've taken 2 sample things, and I'm sure many of you would have something very similar to it, and they are all high thoughts. What I notice interesting is that even in the 2 samples which I have heard now, at least in the top 3, in things that we need to teach children, none of the conventional subjects are part of it. See, either Subhaji or Kumudji have not mentioned mathematics, physics, chemistry, and then geography and history. These subjects were not in their top 3, at least. I'm sure they may not be in the top 5 also. And that is a question that we may have to ask, because when parents ask, when society asks in the name of education, they are looking at an education which is defined pretty much in terms of these subjects, isn't it? So mathematics and physics and chemistry and biology, history, geography, and social studies, these are the things. But unfortunately, we don't have main stream subjects, which is like yoga and meditation, self-sufficiency, self-care, reducing communication, social skills. All that is extracurricular. Now, this is something that we need to understand. Why is it that the conventional subjects are not part of the top 5 or 6 in our list of things that we want our children to have? If so, who decided that these are the main subjects in the conventional approach to education? So this is something that we have to be very clear, because very soon you will be adopting an ICSE syllabus. And once the syllabus is adopted, well, these subjects are going to assume much bigger significance. And you need to have clarity on why do I teach mathematics when, for example, mathematics is not there in my top 10. So when we look at, we will take one example so that we understand the relevancy of the common syllabus, which is widely followed, either CBSE or ICSE or some of the even IG syllabus, so that we are well prepared when the school decides to follow. So here is a question that I want to ask you. All of you were educated in a normal, conventional way of education. Has anybody here from an alternative education background, like, Krishnamurti School, or Waldorf, Steiner, or Montessori school? If anybody who is had their education in alternative education schools, if you could just put up your hand, I would know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that pretty much everybody here have gone through the conventional education, CBSE, IG, ICSE, IG, etc. This is an experiment that we have done, and we need to really convince of ourselves. So if I have to ask you frankly a question, that all of us have gone through an education of approximately for how many years? 15 to 18 years of education before we have got our degree? Yes or no? If anybody has less than 18 years of education, you just put up your hand so that I know that you are coming from a different background. So we have had 18 years of education. Now, let us at least focus on the foundational part, let us say up to class 10. All right, this is the focus of our question now. If I have to ask you frankly, now keep your focus only on the main subject, maths, physics, chemistry, biology. If I have to ask you that a lot of knowledge has been put into your head during this 10 years of education from class 1 to class 10 at least, yes? Some of you may have had your kindergarten also, so add 3 more years in that first 13 years. I know that some of you are still young, but my question is also to the people who have at least lived 40 years of life on this planet, so they can be more authentic. From what has been given to you in the name of education, in those first 13 years up to class 10th, how much of it would you have used in your life as a percentage? Now, remember, in your imagination, you start with your class 1 and then stack all the books, class 2, class 3, and then you reach the high school, and then you reach even up to 10th standard. And in 10th standard, how many subjects did you have? At least a 10 subject. And remember all the big books, and you stack them right in front of you. And that is a knowledge of, I don't know, more than 1,500 or 2,000 pages of knowledge at least. Now imagine that much knowledge has been pushed into your tiny little head. Somehow it happened. We don't know how much went into it. But if I have to ask you that really, honestly looking at your life as a percentage, how much of it would you have used in your life? You have to be very honest about it. Write down as a percentage. Now, for some of you, it will be very difficult, physics, chemistry, biology. So I'm going to take one subject as an example, and then we will extrapolate it. So take the example of the subject maths. All right. So everybody have gone through mathematics from, let's say, class 1 to class 10. Now imagine class 1 textbook of mathematics to class 10. Now arrange them nicely in front of you. How many pages do you think they will run into approximately? Can anybody guess? Type out the number of pages it is likely to run into. Class 1 to class 10. Make a guess. You know approximately how much. I know our 10th standard is around 300 to 350 pages. And obviously the class 1 must be around 100, 150. So on an average, do you think we can say that 200 pages on an average every year? So you have 10 years, And how many pages will that be? 2000 pages. 2000 pages of mathematics. And how many hours would your teachers have taken in order to put 2000 pages of knowledge into your tiny head? Approximately. Mathematics is a very important subject. Every day you have one period, right? And one period means how long is the duration? 45 minutes. All right. So write down 45 minutes on your notebook. In a week, you have how many classes? At least 5 classes, Monday to Friday.
Sir, I would want to interrupt you at this moment because I cannot help saying it, that spending so many hours on mathematics, I'm still not able to, calculate this at the speed I want to.
And now it shows us that even with all that effort, hours and hours, which the teachers have put in order to put that much knowledge into it, still we have found that it was not a good job which was done, if at all you could call it. But still, what I'm asking you is a simple arithmetic. So let's do a fun calculation at least. So 45 minutes.
It will be same number of hours as the pages.
All right. Can we safely say around 2000 hours? 2000 hours taken in order to put 2000 pages of knowledge into your tiny head. And I'm asking you, how much of it would you have used in your life?
I think the exact not part is questionable, but it has developed the logical.
We will come to that later. So first, let us say directly how much of it would you have used. We will come to the secondary use of it, and then we will put a question mark there too. So we will divide our questions into 2 parts. First one, the content, how much as a percentage would you have used? As good as, remember the quadratic equation. So how many times would you have used it in your life? Not as a teacher in your classroom, as a mathematics teacher, in your life. Make an approximate.
I can say less than 10%, actually.
Less. All right. Who is saying this? Could you tell me your name?
Udayashri.
So Jayashri says 10%, and she is being very generous, is what I would say. 10% means 200 pages of mathematics. Do you know how much of mathematics is there and you have used it? And let us take one stock. All of us would have used the basic mathematics for operations, addition, multiplication, division. Multiplication also, okay. Division probably we will be using calculators more. So even there, 3 basic and a little bit of percentage, whenever we have to calculate something. And do you think that will run into 200 pages?
I was also talking about pattern symmetry.
All right. So add them also, patterns and symmetry, which was taught.
Geometry, even as a simple thing when you want to get a dress stitched or, simple things. So you look at the symmetry,
the measurement, the estimate.
Yeah. So when we are cooking, is where normally might be as women we use more. So I don't know. So.
Yes. So let's say basic mathematics, 25 pages, and everything else, measurements, estimate, and all the other things, another geometry, another 25 pages. Now we are not talking about higher geometry, differentiation, calculation. They are all basics. For stitching a dress, you don't need higher geometry, just the basics. 50 pages is what you can pack pretty much everything into it. And 50 pages would mean 50 hours is what it would have taken. Yes or no? Now we take up the first question. How much of the content have you directly used? Now remember, 50 pages out of 2000 pages. What will be the percentage of it? Now people who are really, really good at basic mathematics, give me a percentage. 50 out of 2000. What is the percentage?
2.5.
2.5.
Excellent. There are some very good basic mathematicians there. We are talking about 2.5. Now I'm very, very generous. So at least double it up. Through some other probably subset, in some way, we would have used it without knowing that these are also part of our mathematics textbook. I would say without hesitation that 5% of the content of mathematics we would really have used in our life. So I'm going to put it in a nice sentence. In the prime of our life, there was something which is taught to us of which only 5% we have directly put into use. I don't know how that sounds, but then there is another question also which happens. No. It's not just the content. I understand that 95% of the content, we have not used it at all. And it sounds a little odd, but it is okay. But there are side benefits. What are the side benefits? You remember what you were told. How many times you have been told to mug up the formulas, like second degree equation? Anybody have mugged up the second degree equation? Who can tell me just like that, what is the second degree quadratic equation? Do you remember ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, where a is not 0, and therefore x is equal to, people who are, how many can remember? Anybody can remember here? Just raise your hand and then say x is equal to what in that quadratic equation? Because somebody told me that there is a side benefit, because forcing students to memorize the formulas have increased their memory. So I want to check what happened to the memory of all of you, because all of you have been taught that quadratic equation. So the other claim seems to be a little questionable. One, because every time I ask this question, I get it. No, we forced people to memorize, so at least memory got developed. Content, only 95% is useless. They have not used it, but memory. What I see from just asking you is even the memory has not yet been properly developed. Perseverance, every day you will have to sit together at least for half an hour to solve all the problems, isn't it? So we can say we persevered. And was it a very pleasant experience? Something brilliant came out of it, so that all of you are given the certificate, most hardworking people, because they have been made to do mathematics at it? Or did it create kind of difficulty? Fumes started coming out of your head, and sometime you gave up because you couldn't understand quadratic equation. You don't know the way it was taught. It was not made relevant to us. It was not made part of our life. So we have no idea that why am I learning? And therefore we even gave up. I would say that rather than making up us into people who have a lot of perseverance, it made us give up. Like Kritika said, I gave up long time back. It's too much for me because it was not made relevant to me. I was not helped to gradually open up to the world of mathematics, because I can't say where differentiation and calculation can be part of my life. So it is a luggage, a load that I carry, which is not going to be useful for my life. So memory, I'm not sure whether it has helped us memory. Perseverance, there is another thing. After making attempts at solving the problems, we got tired, we wanted to give up, but we were forced to do even if we did not like it. Now, there are always exceptions to what I say, because there are some students, 1 in 100 or somebody like that, who love doing mathematics. But by and large, the way it was introduced, the way it was not made relevant to us, made us really, really difficult. So we forced ourselves to do something which we didn't like. And that is an important quality in life, because life doesn't always give you only the things that you like to do if you are not trained yourself. But even here, I would ask you, what is the result of it? After the mathematics exams are over, have you found that relief? No, oh, I don't have to carry those things anymore because mathematics exam is over. Pretty much all other exams are over. And therefore, even the side benefits, which Didi has mentioned, are very, very minimal. We are somewhere kind of hypnotizing ourselves into thinking that something of which 95% I'm not going to use, and whose side benefits, when you analyze it, is not actually benefited me, very minimal benefit, and yet we are somehow doing it. Even when you have to adopt your syllabus, you will again be put in the question. And that is why I started. When you have to teach the same thing to your children, what is it that has come to your mind? Just the question. See, I'm not even giving you the answer, just the question. Am I teaching something of which 95% of the content, he's not going to use it, number one. Side benefits, I can kind of, if I am at it, I can make the side benefits happen. I can help him to increase his memory, perseverance, doing the things which he doesn't like to do. But is it worth it? I can very well improve memory by just playing some memory games. The children will love it. If you put it into a game, their memory will increase by leaps and bounds. Perseverance, bring in something important, like for example, sports, and then watch how children are ready to persevere and increase their capacities and even doing things that are difficult. If you generate interest in these things, they are ready to do it. You don't really need the content, the syllabus as it is given to us today. But it is not completely so for everybody. There may be 1 in 1,000 who is meant to be a mathematician, a scientist. For him, yes. So let us not disregard that also. Huh? There will always be exceptions. But remember, in a class of 40, 1 or 2, not more than that. At least in the group that I have, none of you have chosen, which already gives us an idea that for every subject, when you have so much content, only for each subject, only 1 or 2 is meant to go beyond the basics. 50 hours of mathematics, physics, chemistry are essential to life. Yes or no? The fundamental, the basic mathematics, essential, basic physics, everybody has to know. But beyond the basics, we have to ask ourselves, if I am bringing in a content which is not going to be relevant for him, can I not bring a content which is much more directly relevant to him? Now, this is the question that we have to deal with. If we have not figured out, then we are losing the advantage of being an alternative education. So the conventional subjects, the way they are introduced and the content, the way they are prepared, 90% at least is not directly usable. Side benefits are also very less. Now, this is the number 2, second thing that I wanted to notice. Third one, at least we are clear with our list. Not those things, the way it is taught to me, I want to teach these things to my children. Each one of you already have a list of 10, isn't it? If this were a group activity, I would have loved to do this as a group activity, but let's go ahead with it. So each one of you have 10 things which you want to impart to children. Now, you need to convert them into subjects so that you can take them up for a proper methodical approach. Yes or no? If there are simply 10 items in the list, probably in the next 1 or 2 months, you might finish all the 10 lists. And sometimes it might take a little longer also. But if you convert it into a proper subject, you can approach it in a systematic, graded way so that you can go deep into what you want to teach. For example, I'm even talking about the communication skills. 1, language. So you take up the language and then go deep into it. How does one communicate? How does one understand the value of the words, their meaning, when you put them in a right combination, how they can communicate? That itself is a beginning. Second one, how does one develop one's intelligence so that one has intelligent things to say? Isn't it? The content part of the communication. And you can come up with graded activities where you can come up with quite a large number of lesson plans where the intelligence can be increased. But if you have to increase the intelligence, you can't help the child to develop the intelligence unless and until the child is taught to observe things so that he can start developing his intelligence, isn't it? Suppose there has to be a knowledge of plants. How do you do it? You go, you observe the plants, you compare, you differentiate, and then only you can convert it into knowledge, which is used by the intelligence. So suddenly you see that you can actually, if you make it into a subject, approach it in a graded way, you can make it happen from KG or even pre-KG to even 6th standard in according to the age of the child. So I'm going to ask you to relook at the list of things that you have made, and can you convert it into subject? You can come up with a nice innovative name and see whether 1 or 2 or 3 can be clubbed into one subject, and they could be the subject of an alternative education. In that ideal school that you have, they can become subject. Now, who decided that physics, chemistry, and biology has to be the names of the subject? How did they arrive at it? It was not given from the sky, isn't it? There is a subject called physics, and all that is of particular category you put into it. No, people observed a life, and out of their observation, they decided that this has a certain similarity with this, so let me put everything together. And then other things, let me put into another, and then they gave it a name, and therefore it became physics and chemistry and mathematics. In the same way, if we have to work up a curriculum, we also need to bring together things as a subject so that it can be taken up for deeper exploration. So look at the list that you have made and then see whether you can convert it into subject. So take about 5 minutes. And from what I have shared with you, if you want to add a few more points or leave out a few more points, go ahead and do it and see whether you can come up with at least 3-4 subjects which are completely innovative and novel, which are not part of the conventional names given to what you have to teach. Yes, somebody has sent me a message. Intelligence, gathering knowledge, observation. In order to observe, you need to learn to listen. Which is very true. You see how you are expanding it. So what will you start with? Now that will be my next question. So once you have noted down the components, the way I have described, so break your subjects, give a subject name, break it into components. And not too many, but just enough. All right. So those who have finished, take up one subject, and then look at the content the way I have described. For example, in the communication, you have 2 things. One is the content and the skills. And the content, well, you need to have a well-developed intelligence. In order to develop an intelligence, well, you need observational skills. And in order to observe something, all the senses have to be properly opened. You should be able to listen and see and smell. Otherwise, how will you gather knowledge? So break it up into at least few steps until you arrive at the first thing that you have to start with. So I'm going to give you an example in what I have described to you. So in the communication part, developing intelligence, you need to develop observation. There are several other things too. Something like concentration also needs to be developed. But at least in observation, you need all the senses to be developed. So you start with sense development, step 1. And then you develop the powers of observation. And then you make the comparison, differentiation. And then you categorize them, convert it into knowledge, and make use of that knowledge so that it goes into part of developing the intelligence. So in any one point or subject, just 5 or 6 steps is sufficient.
May I, sir? So in my
Sure.
list of what I want children to have, I had put down as my number 1 point as loads of time in nature.
Okay, nature.
So for that, we kind of had a discussion on this, and we call it our nature study period.
Excellent.
Wherein now if to break it down into steps, I'd probably say that the first step would be observation.
Okay.
Leading the observation from macro to micro, as in observing all the most relevant or visible details to going deeper.
Very nice.
Same thing, the next point would be asking questions and again move from irrelevant to relevant.
Relevant.
Just allow them to question.
Okay.
Then making connections with the wondering that is happening. And recording the observations. Recording the observations as well as the connections.
Excellent.
So
now,
if I had to, yes.
If we have to sequentialize, which will be the first one?
First one will be observation.
Observation,
because they're
then
innately
questions. Asking questions, making connection, and then the recording.
And then the recording, I feel. Yes.
Interesting. So have we missed out any very vital component in that? How do we come to know? Can all of you have all been listening? Can anybody tell me that probably, there is something that could be very vital as a step. This needs to be included. Can anybody contribute to what we have already made? We need to commune with nature, the connection with nature. So she has already given at least 4 steps. Does anybody think one more step could be added, which is important and critical?
I think that could be like, what would be the takeaway from this content? Like,
whoa, that is a really, what do you mean by takeaway?
Like how this content, helps us to connect to our reality.
Very interesting. Does the children need to be given a lecture on how are all benefit? Will they only take it up? Or is it something that we need to keep ourselves before selecting the topic?
I would like to share one thing, Shivakumarji. Like it's like,
Yes.
I would think like the presentation would be a good thing so that every child gets the perception of the other child and how they are perceiving things differently, so that they'll get a collective, thought process on how things look differently, and they also learn acceptance of others' perceptions and ideas.
Okay, so Udeshi says we need to have a presentation. But now Kritika is going to counter that probably, or add something.
Is it going out? Is that the first step?
No, that is too minute step. But we are talking about major and critical steps. So in that, Udeshi says you need to give a lecture or presentation.
No, I would not feel so.
I was
in the recording.
About children presenting what they have observed, or how they have felt about certain things that they have observed.
Oh, that is already done in the recording part, isn't it, Kritika?
Yes.
So when they record, after they record, Udeshi adds, well, they can have a sharing presentation, which is fine.
Well, in the recording observations, the precursor to that would be to build the skills to record.
Write it down. There could be a list of things.
I was about to say that. So that would be the precursor to all of this.
This is very important, because if you have not developed the skills, you may go through mechanically the steps.
Correct.
What will be the end result will be very mediocre. Excellent.
Correct. So the beginning to precursor to any of this would be to build those skills, where again we go back to communication skills, to
language.
Language, exactly. So it all starts from there.
Yes. Now, very, very nice. So this will come as during the first, second, and third steps. Before the recording and presentation happens, at least some skills should have been developed. Otherwise, the recording will be inefficient and presentation also will be inefficient. Now, can anybody else add any more critical component or the stage that need to be covered to make this more meaningful to children? I'm prodding you because there is a fundamental way of looking at a child in order to arrive at. If we know that, it will be very easy to come up with steps. That is where I am going at. So can anybody tell me any of the missing stages here, which is very necessary and critical?
Can it be how meaningful is it for the child to do or observe certain things? Like,
interesting. So how will you do that? How meaningful is to be in communication with nature?
Actually, to do the concept itself, is it like something like where you have to think about how meaningful it would be for the child to experience all this?
Now Subha is questioning you, Kritika. Is it even relevant to children? And how do you decide? Why do you think it is meaningful to children? Now that is an extremely important thing for a teacher before even the teacher says, I want to help my children to be in touch with nature. So why do you think children need to be in touch with nature, Kritika?
Well, I believe that in this very technologically advanced world, we are become more of an alien, and living within that bubble, there is hardly any connect with our natural surroundings. For me, I grew up in a forest in all my schooling years. And to move to Chennai was a big difference, with everything concrete around me. So I feel that there is a lot that can be taken in, even without one realizing or sensing, when you're just allowed to be in your natural surroundings. So now I think it has become a conscious effort for the adults around to create such spaces and experiences for children because of the lack of it.
Excellent. Remember the first question I asked? Now, how relevant is what you teach? This is the answer to that question. If you are not convinced how relevant it is, because look at nature, how much being in nature which will teach us. The whole of nature, if you look at it, if it gives deep insights into life. All of nature actually lives in a state of offering its best to the world. Take a mango tree example, for example. In order to develop one mango, how much the tree has to work, after developing it, there has to be a flower, and then there has to be a seed, and then the seed has to grow into a nice, juicy, tasty mango. After going into all the effort and creating one of the tastiest mangoes in the whole world, do you think the tree says, it's my mango, I want to keep it? When do you find a tree finding its fulfillment? When it gives away, it will let go of the mango and as an offering to the whole world. You just have to wait for it. If it comes, it is the ripest mango. What an important lesson. The amount of another thing which I have not mentioned as one of the steps that could be considered is how important is developing and refining our senses in order to commune with nature. You see, what you see has to be very well refined. What you smell, what you taste, what you touch, all the 5 senses need to be extremely refined and developed if you want to have a richest experience of nature. Yes or no? You see, now where does sense development fit in?
Yeah, may I?
Yes, where does sense development fit in? Please,
Yes,
Lakshmi.
Yeah, so related to the question, and I agree to the points what you have mentioned also. And this is more than now the children are being brought up in a sophisticated society and environment. They don't know to value the things they get. And appreciating nature is the basic thing that every human being should be doing. So they can value and care for the things around them, how they are getting things, they can appreciate that, and they can respect the things that they are around. And in future also, they might take care of and be responsible for the things that are happening around them.
Excellent. So, Kritika, more points come to you.
Education is more important.
The responsibility. If you look at animals, the way they bring up their children, what an enormous example we can get. A cat or all the animals, until their babies grow up, they will be completely taking care, teach it all the skills necessary. But once it has grown up, it's an individual. You don't say that I have taken care of you as a child. Now, when I grow old, you have to take care of me. This is a business deal. No, you see, in fact, all this are necessary. The first point that I have asked you, how relevant is what I teach? Because this subject teaches so much more to children. But my second question is, where does sense development fit into the 5 steps which Kritika has listed out? Observation, asking questions, making connection, recording, presentation.
It being the observation only, isn't it?
Exactly. You observe with what? Your
Correct.
eyes, you smell things, that is part of observation. You hear, you taste, and suddenly you find what was just observation, which was a little vague, macro to micro. You need senses, and you have to put in the sense. How many senses do we have to develop? How many senses are there? How many do we need to get connected with nature, Kritika?
5 at least.
All 5.
All the 5.
Yes, exactly. Even if you have a couple of extra senses, put them also in, because you will need all the senses to put in. And suddenly, but why did I say sense development? And was there any particular way of me looking at it which kind of gave me the clue, oh, this is an important point? Now, this is in fact what I wanted to take up and share with you all, so that we get a clue on how to approach education, how to come up with meaningful, purposeful content when we are with children, especially in a school like yours. So I'm going to take a step back and then see, when we have to sequentialize what sometimes people are so clear about what they want to teach the children because 10 points are ready. But where do we start? how do we proceed, and where do we reach, and how do we sequentialize the steps is something for which we need very deep insight into the psychology of how children grow. And this is where the education which I'm familiar with, it's called integral education. In Sanskrit, it's called Purna Siksha, developed by the mother and Sri Aurobindo of the Sri Aurobindo ashram, which gives really deep insights into a child's growth. And once I share it with you, you will understand. You just have to take a look at whatever you want to teach and you will come up with your own steps so that it becomes a very sequential, methodical, graded approach to whatever you want to teach children. So when we observe children as they grow up, as soon as a child is born, we can look at the child growing up as a flower which is blooming. All right. So imagine a flower which is in the process of blooming. Initially, it is a bud. All the petals are closed. And then as it grows, one petal opens, one petal opens, one petal opens. And there is a sequence in which the petals open. Tell me, which petals open first, the outer ones or the inner ones? The outer ones, because without outer ones, the inner ones cannot open. They are already, suffocated. They have to wait for their time so that the outermost layer opens, then a second layer opens, and then the inner and subtler layers open up until what is there central to the flower, the fragrance, starts coming out from the center in a fully bloomed flower. Then you say that, oh, this flower has grown fully and this is beautiful. It has become what it is meant to be. In the same way, as soon as a child is born, you will notice one of the first things that the child can immediately sense the mother, even with the smell. Even some of the children who are born, their eyes are not even open with it, but you take the child away from the mother and then it will lose the sense of proximity and touch and it will start crying. And when the mother holds it close, oh, nothing like that. Because where did it come from? From the inside, the womb of the mother. So it already has the senses beginning to develop. So after a day or two, it opens the eyes and then its capability to hear the sounds also opens up. It starts smelling, it starts hearing, it starts seeing. Initially, everything is a blur, but gradually the petal, which is called the senses, open up. As they open up, something else also begins to happen. Now, several of you here already have born children, so you can very well relate to me. When a child is born and it has started opening its eyes, what is the first major stage that you look forward to? I still remember in my family, when it happened, then everybody said, oh, it happened, it happened. Can anybody tell me what is the first stage which is physically happens to the child?
Turn to the side.
Turn. Yeah, the moment it turns, until that, it starts splashing around and it's like a bug which has fallen on its, nice shaped backside. It's not able to get back onto his legs. So the moment it rolls over, immediately, oh, it has turned. Because once it has turned, the next stages of growth are already ready to begin. So once a child has turned, then it is beginning to make use of its hands and legs much more prominently, yes or no? And then what does it do? What is the next thing it do? It doesn't stay in one place. What does it do?
Crawl.
It starts crawling. And suddenly a steps comes. It doesn't leave out the steps also. It will crawl. It will fall down. And yet it will crawl. And anything that it can catch hold of, you will notice that the child is gradually wanting to get up and then sit or stand, isn't it? So once the crawling stage has happened and sitting and standing stage comes, and then the child begins to walk by holding on to things. If you hold the child's hands, it begins to walk. So you see the gradual unfolding sequence. Once a child begins to walk by itself, what happens in the initial stages? It will fall down, it will get up, it will fall down because its leg muscles are not yet ready. But because it falls down 100 times, does a child decide that, no, I won't attempt getting up anymore? Does it happen? It will still want to get up. Why is that? It's not that it wants to fall again, but in the process, it is strengthening its muscles, leg muscles. With every fall, the leg muscle becomes stronger until one day it is capable of standing up and then walking. Once it becomes capable of walking, what does it get into? It wants to run. Anything to climb? It wants to climb. So, and then side by side, the mother is trying to feed, and mother figures out what goes in and stays, and then what are the things which go in and come out immediately that she won't give it again. You see, the mother is figuring out. The child is also communicating to the mother what is okay with me, what is not okay with me. So it will spit out, it will vomit whatever is not okay with its system. And then the most difficult thing is the sleeping pattern. How much as mothers you would have struggled? Invariably, it wakes up at night and then goes to sleep in the morning. And when you want to go to sleep, it is wide awake and it wants to play with it to get that cycle ready. So the sleeping habits, the eating habits, taking control of the body, getting up, sitting, crawling, running, climbing, and the senses opening. This is the whole focus of the child in the first few years. And you can't teach mathematics to a child of 4 or 5 months old, can you? Try physics, chemistry, biology, nothing, it will go bouncer. Why? Because the nature in the child, something in the child is decided. First petal I'm going to open and develop is concerning my body, my physicality. Eating, sleeping, getting control of my body to the extent it possible, opening up the senses. And as the child grows further, it begins to engage with the world more and more, and sense development becomes one of its primary criteria. And now you look at Montessori system, and then you can understand why Montessori system insists on sense development so much in the initial stages, because that is how the child begins to engage with the world. And if you don't help the child to develop the senses, when it grows up, it won't be able to see clearly, hear properly. The refinement of all the sensorial observation will be very dull. At 10th standard, you take the child and say, observe the tree, observe the sky, observe the sunrise. Hardly anything will be apparent because the child doesn't know how to observe. Why? The senses are not refined. And pink will look like red. It usually happens with men, by the way. They can't differentiate between pink or red. Whereas the girls, ladies especially, who went on picking the sari and the blouse, matching, they have played with colors left and right. They can immediately come up with, because their sense of sight is so very well developed. And also, if they have started arranging things, their sense of proportion, sense of beauty, aesthetics, all that becomes developed. But this is what nature has intended. In the first few years, it has to be the physical development. And education of the body is one of the first primary criteria with which we have to start. And now, when you come up with big things, the 10 things I want to impart, you just see that the child has not skipped any of the initial stages. If it has skipped, it's going to be a problem. You're going to blame the child. It's not the child who is needed to be blamed. And you might give all the fancy names to the child, ADHD, autism, all, simply because we have not helped the child to follow the natural sequence of growth. Then it becomes a problem at the later stages. And then another thing which you'll observe, as the child reaches 2 years, 3 years, you'll find that it is beginning to relate to people. Yeah, until that, it's only mother. Mother will have to somehow sense and understand the child's need and take care of it. But as the child reaches 2, 3 years, and as it grows further, it's able to relate. And the second petal, I would say, of the child begins to open up, which is, I would call it as the petal of emotions. It begins to relate to people and things emotionally. Anything that makes it happy, it will go for it. Isn't it? Anything that makes it cry, immediately it will shrink back. isn't it? Now, interesting. And at that time, a lot of interesting thing happens, which we can, if we really want to understand how to help a child who is in the second stage of emotional growth, we will have to draw our lessons from the first stage. What are the lessons we can draw from the first stage? If we have to help the child to develop a very healthy body, at least a few things we need to ensure. One, you need to give the child healthy food, not junk food. And healthy food, which is okay with the child's needs. And you can't only feed the child all healthy food and allow it to stay in one place from morning to evening. What is the child allowed to do? It has to play. Otherwise, all the food that has gone, how will it get digested? So the child will have to roll and jump and all the games. These two are essential. We call it as ahar, what goes in. And the child has to express itself and exercise itself through movement and games. We call it as vihar, right? And then the child who has exercised well grows to be a very child with a very healthy body. Yes or no? But if we don't follow this, if you don't give healthy food to children, if you have not allowed the child to play abundantly, freely with its body, then it goes through a stunted growth. Its body becomes sick. Yes or no? We don't feed it properly at the right time with the right food. Sleep habits, eating habits, playing habits, if they are not okay, then the body becomes sick and it carries for the lifetime. Now, these are the learnings that we take from the first stage. Is it everybody has understood? Those who have children, they know it very well. This is how we proceed. Those who are yet to have children, well, you know, this is the first approach that you have to take. And then when the child grows, when it is ready to connect with people emotionally, same formula applies. What is the formula? You have to feed the child with something healthy, and the child will have to exercise in order to digest it and grow in a healthy way. So I'm practically telling you, suppose if for a child in the early stages, if somebody has discovered, let us say, a health samosa, I'm just coming out with it. Samosas are not generally healthy, but I'm just taking an example. This is not a normal samosa, but health samosa, totally different in its contents. You know, you have to feed the child every day with at least one health samosa. All right? Imagine it is easier to. And suppose the child says that today I have had samosa, now I have had it few days, now I will not take samosas anymore. No, it doesn't make sense. You need the health samosa, right? Not samosa. In its place, you substitute with whatever you want, health food, let us say. So for me, I have grown up with idli and dosa and then pongal, all prepared in a nice and healthy way by my mom. And I don't complain that, no, I've already taken 2 days continuously, mornings idli, then third day I need something else. No. Sometimes, and usually in majority of the times, you can even repeat provided the food is healthy. But I need to digest it, express it, then my body grows healthy. Now, the second part of growth of the child, when the emotional body, the emotions are also a kind of a body, only it is not a physical body. What body is it? It's made up of emotions. And this body, if it has to grow properly, you need to give it also a health samosa. Is there what kind of food you can give in order to make emotions healthy? Can anybody tell me? Is there a food which people have discovered which actually can give healthy emotions to people? For physical body, you need physical food to become healthy in the physical body. For emotional body,
I think feeling love and being cared for.
Exactly. You can't with physical food give healthy emotions. Physical food will go to the physical body and make body healthy. For the emotional body, you will have to surround the child with all the positive emotions. Yes or no? Then the emotional body will have such a nourishing, healthy, energetic food that its emotions will become very mature and robust and very much developed. Yes or no? And you see why it is so important to surround the child with love, care, concern, empathy, understanding, taking care of it. And that is a daily need of the child in that stage. And does it mean that you can stop giving the child physical food? No, the physical has to continue to grow. But in the second stage, the focus is more on making, enriching, and nourishing the child emotionally, because that is when the nature in the child says that I'm ready, my emotions are ready, please develop me, give me positive emotions. So that's a very interesting thing happens. This is the age in which children love to hear stories which have a lot of emotions. You know, brother taking care of brother, mother taking care of children, and a lot of things where everything is good. Why? Why is a child interested in story? Because when a child listens to a story, it becomes the healthy samosa for the emotional body. And sometimes its need is so much that it will ask you to tell the same story every day, 10 times, 15 times. Why? It's like having a healthy idli every day. It's a need of the physical body to become healthy. In the same way, the emotional body also needs to grow. All the stories which have emotional content, values that are there, friendship value, value of love and truthfulness and honesty, all that has to be packed in the beautiful story form. And also remember, you can't only eat food, you have to express it and exercise also. How does the vital, the emotions, which the mother gives it the name, by the way, the vital, because the vitality of life in terms of emotions becomes part of it. How do you express your emotions? Can you tell me, when you have to express emotions, what are the general ways in which you people express your emotions? Who can tell me? When you are
crying or through laughing?
Through laughing, laughter. Yes, definitely. Anything else? When you are happy or when you are sad or when you are little, how do you exercise and express it?
Like it's usually through your facial expressions, your body, or you use the language, like the language to express, communicating through.
At that age, the child is yet to make stronger association with the words, but it is something in the process. It will happen. But anything else that you can see if the child has to express its emotion?
Even body movement, like movements, with joy, and or they'll roll on the floor if they're upset.
They will roll on the floor, they will jump. But if more emotions have to be expressed,
they will hug, probably hugs.
A hug.
A hug.
They will hug, definitely. So these are all physical expressions. But can you come up with more of such expressions where the child can express its emotions more beautifully? For example, when you watch the old movies, when people are very happy, what do?
Laugh, basically, like
cry. Tears of joy.
And
I think they also have that sense of touch. They'll touch someone, hold hand. So,
and
hug, touch, like pat.
Come up, and I'm waiting for one more thing to come.
Making sounds.
I think a lot of things through eyes also, communication.
And
shouting.
They sing and dance.
Dance.
Come on. The songs of happiness, dance. The moment, anytime an emotion reaches a high, they break out into a song. They dance. You see, they are wonderful medium. In fact, if I want to make everybody happy, if I start singing, immediately the emotions will go on a high. Yes or no? These are now, there are a few things which are excellent for expressing the emotions. And definitely music is one of them. If not, the emotions get bottled up. Through speech, you can express your emotions to a certain extent. But if you want to express more, you need to have a song. You need to have a music because music can communicate much more than what words can communicate as far as emotions are concerned. And therefore, there are a few things which in the integral education we say are excellent, which will help the child to express itself in a more and more refined way. The first one is definitely the music. Second one is art. You ask a child, how do you express a happy home? The child will start drawing. And then one father, happy, smiley face, and then mother. And then there are a lot of things. Immediately, the child cannot yet express things verbally in a refined way, but through art and through lyrics, poetry at a later stage. So art, music, and poetry are definitely some of the beautiful ways, but they have to be used as a ways of expressing so that the emotional part, even when it is very sad in the olden movies, what happens? One song, even now, when you feel sad, you feel like singing the song. But unfortunately, in the modern movies, when somebody is very sad, they feel like smashing things. They get violent. So you have the option of violently expressing your emotion or expressing your emotions in a refined and more beautiful way. So much so that, well, it makes you into a better person. A person who smashes things because intense emotions are there, or a person who expresses his emotions in a refined way because there is an intense emotions. What signifies the degree of refinement? Well, obviously. And this is the second stage, the stage of emotions. And therefore, tell a lot of stories, put a lot of values so that the character part, what we call as the heart. Yeah. First is the body. Second stage is the heart of the child develops and becomes so refined that even when the child happens to be depressed, it won't enter into, for example, crude ways of expressing the depression, like going for drugs, drinks, harming oneself. These are all very crude. Refined people. A child who has a refined capacity, well, he will draw something, he will sing something. And the beauty of this expression is it will take away your negative things. What a wonderful thing. Drugs and drinks will only make it more complicated, the refined ways of expressions. So this is the age, the second stage, where you have lot of art and music and dance and theater and drama, where you can emote, learn to express yourself abundantly. And this is the second part. And so we have already seen how nature has already designed a sequential way of opening up the petals. And as the child grows, let us say into 9, 10 years old, you will find another tendency getting developed in the child. The child begins to show interest in stories of a special type. What are they? Detective stories and mystery novels, something related to scientific fiction, all the thing where the child begins to ask questions. Why is it? It is already interested in, oh, this happens because of that. It is trying to figure out things. It doesn't happen. A 3-year-old child doesn't want to figure out everything. It happens at a third stage when the head, what mother calls this as the mind, begins to develop. So the focus shift, everything the child wants to observe, analyze, ask 100 questions, question you. This is a time when the child actually begins to observe and understand their parents are not the ideal role models. Until that, well, pretty much what parents say, they get to listen. But when they grow up, they observe, they analyze, they ask questions. My dad told me not to lie, but I see my dad lying conveniently. He's asking question, why? Isn't it? Now this third stage is the stage when things that are of a logical nature, planning, organizing things, getting everything, trying to figure out things happens. And that is when you will have to introduce in your, what you want to introduce, things that are of the nature of the thinking mind, of an intellectual nature. Until that, for a 3-year-old, when the sky appears blue, you can't explain the scientific way in which a sky appears blue. The child it will go above. But you tell a story to a child, Krishna is looking after us, he is blue in color and he's always taking care of us. There is a deeper truth in it. There is a greater intelligence which is taking care of it. So you're not telling lies to the child. There is a truth, but you tell it in a way the child can relate to it. But to a 13-year-old child, well, what do you have to say? You have to include things for which he is ready. You will have to say there is a white color, and then you will have to go into the principles of refraction. And then what comes through is a blue color, and then say there is a cosmic intelligence which is designing everything in this way. That cosmic intelligence, some people call it as Krishna. And you must have heard the story of Krishna when you were a tiny little child. You see, you have explained the same sky according to the stage of the child, and you don't have to lie. You don't have to contradict yourself. If you know the sequence of growth, you can explain the way things are by explaining in an age or development appropriated way. Now, we have almost, do we have 10 more minutes or you have another session coming up? All that I need is...
Yeah, we can take 10 more minutes.
All right, so that I will round it up. Now, what we have seen is a kind of a sequential. Now, when the mind starts developing, it doesn't mean that you have to switch off your emotion. It happens sometimes in the corporate world. Leave your emotions outside. Only your intellect has to come and say, why? Lot of discussion has to happen, and they will keep on discussing from morning to night, discussion. And somebody who is needing a little more emotional expression will say, Arey Baba, these people only talk. If you have attended any of the long discussions that take place, you are engaging only one part of yourself. You can't do that. That's doing a kind of a suppression to yourself. You need to get up and have a song in between, have something nice, warm to the heart, and then get up and move around with your body. And whatever happens, do not make children sit in the classroom from morning to evening. You are forcing the physical part to stay in one place. That is doing violence. And once you understood the makeup, the psychological and physical makeup of a child, you will be able to notice what to do, when to do, and how to do. And this is coming from the insight of integral education. It has mapped out the sequential growth. But there is something more, which is very, very unique to integral education, which also gives you the clue to why we call it as integral education. Now, when you observe the children growing, we all have their physical development. It continues once it has started. Emotional development, you can't say that stop emotion and start mental growth. You can't say that also continues till the end of life. Once the mind starts growing and it starts questioning things, now what you notice is there are a few questions which become very, very important to the child. And what are these questions? Why was I born? What am I meant to be? Teacher or father, mother, dad, can you tell me? I have a good body. I can bash up people, or I can use it for something nice. I have all my emotions very well developed. In the Adyar school, I've been helped to grow these things. But what am I do? I can make everybody cry. You get very good at emotional blackmailing if your emotions are very developed. I tell you, you can use it to blackmail emotionally somebody or make somebody happy. What am I meant to do? Now, I don't know whether you have observed, there is something called WWE, wrestling matches which go on. My God, they have almost perfectly developed bodies. What are they using it for? Bashing up people, picking up chair, banging, blood is coming. And they have perfectly developed bodies. So developing the bodies so that it becomes perfect is not sufficient. Emotionally, you can make anybody cry. Emotional blackmail, you can manipulate. A good film actor, can make literally 1 million people cry. Like, I don't know who is the emotional actor in your region. Like in North, if Shah Rukh Khan cries, he can make millions of people cry. That is the capacity of emotional thing you fear. Emotions are developed, you can make it happen. Or do you want to make people happy? And in this world, there is something called industrial corporate scams that have happened. Everybody aware of it? People cheat other people to millions and millions of rupees. There was a 2G scam which happened. There is in the COVID times, there are certain businesses because of which flourished. They wanted to take advantage of things. These are all very intelligent people, but what are they using their intelligence for? How to cheat others so that I can make more money. We don't want to be people who have developed a body which can bash up people, developed emotions which can blackmail emotionally other people, developed a mind which can cheat everybody, come up with strategies, laws where my focus is on cheating everybody. No, no, no. These three are not sufficient. In fact, we need another part of ourselves which can give us the answer. What is the best way of using my body, my emotions, and my mind, which have got developed? That is when we touch the core of integral education, because this is the beautiful word which Mother says, and I'm going to read it to you because it's extremely important. She says, all of us know and dealt with these three parts. Yes, can anybody tell me that I've never experienced my physical part, my body? Can anybody? I hope not. You all have eaten, slept with your body. Can anybody say that I've never felt emotions in my life? I never knew that there is a heart to me, psychological heart. No, everybody has expressed and experienced emotions. None of us can say that we have not experienced thoughts, because all of us have mind. But there is one part which probably only a few of us have experienced, that also in a very, very limited way. It comes as a flash. I'm going to ask every one of you, can you recall some of the best moments in your life? Some of the best moments. Maybe somebody needed something, you did it, and it was exactly the right thing to do, and the other person lighted up. It gave you such a joy. And you wanted to come out with an idea. Suddenly, one of the most brilliant idea flashed to you, or you wanted to love somebody. So much love suddenly came. You don't know from where it is coming. There are a few things which are of the nature of genius. You understand what a genius is? These guys get plenty of inspirations, which is not coming from their well-educated mind, because mind thinks everything only rationally and logically. It doesn't come from emotions, because emotions are there to add warmth to it. Doesn't come from body. These guys get, for example, brilliant ideas, brilliant inspiration for art. They even can conceive a music. Like, for example, A.R. Rahman, he sets a tune and millions are swayed by it. There are people who get formulas like greatest genius Ramanujam. We are not coming from ordinary part of ourselves. And the mother, who is one of the founders of integral education, says there is a part in every one of us. And nobody can say that I don't have that part. And in fact, the aim of life is to develop our physical, emotional, and mental parts aligned with this genius who is sitting inside every one of us, because every one of us is meant to be a genius. And to align and integrate our physical and emotional and mental part to this genius sitting inside is what we should call as a complete education. Purna Siksha or integral education. And this is what she says. And listen to me very carefully, with that we will close. There is a genius within every one of us. We don't know it. Because my parents have not told me, my education system has not told me. If at all, they have called me Buddhu, stupid, and then all the other labels it has given. Nobody has told me that there is a genius inside me. And here is the mother, the founder of integral education, says there is a genius inside every one of us. We don't know it. And then we must find the way to make it come out. That's when we become genius. How can it come out if you have a underdeveloped mind, totally underdeveloped emotions, and a very, very weak body? No, it won't come out. But you develop these in alignment, ready to express what comes from within. not what comes from outside. And then when such a person stands up, he literally becomes a genius. And then the mother says, well, that part in us also wants to express itself. What does it do? The mother says, it asks for nothing better than to manifest. We must open the door to it. Can we make it part of our education that every development that we make is referred to that part in us, that part is consulted, so that a child who is meant to be a musical genius, he develops definitely the musical skills in his physical, the emotions necessary for creating music, the structure comes from the mind, but the inspiration to be a musical genius comes from that fourth part, which the mother has named it as the psychic. The psychic being, common man says, the soul inside. And there is a soul inside every one of us. If anybody comes and tells you that no, nobody can say that, I think I have a little less of the soul. No, everybody has it in equal measure. Only it has a million ways of expressing its genius. What is my way is what I have to discover. And our education must help us to discover my way of expressing this genius with the help of physical education. At the initial stage, it should continue with the emotional education. Mother calls it as the vital education. Some people will say in the 1990s, Daniel Goleman brought in emotions. No, this has been brought in way back as 1910 by Sri Aurobindo, that emotions have to be part of it. And then developing the mind so that these personality becomes a medium for expressing the true genius within. We'll pause here. And this is the education. Now that you know it, then you can look at and then categorize, serialize, sequentialize, build into it components, which will make your education into something which I would say everybody would say that, go to Adyar Theosophical Society's education school, you will understand the true meaning of education. That must be what we should attempt for. So if you have any questions or anything, in a very, very brief way, I have presented, I have relooked at what should be the real meaning of education and how we can come up with developing the curriculum based on these insights which integral education offers. Anybody would like to share? We have a few minutes before, I think the 12 o'clock, we are calling it. We have already overshot by 20 minutes because I didn't want to rush up with these things. Yes.
Sir, how do we as adults, sorry, Uday, go ahead.
No.
How do we as adults look for the genius?
All right.
Align.
So here is one quotation from the mother. If we have to make it happen with children, where the children discover their genius, you can't make it happen unless and until you have done it with yourself. Or at least you are walking the path towards discovering your own genius. And all of you have decided to become teachers. Ask yourself, what type of a teacher do I want to be? Do I want to be a normal result getting teacher, or do I want to be an inspired teacher which a child is going to remember when he grows up and becomes 60 years old, he still recalls the teacher. And I'm sure all of you have such teachers from your earliest time. Do I want to be an inspired teacher? If I want to be an inspired teacher, then I need to make this journey. But I don't have to follow the sequence of the child. I don't have to start with physical education and then vital, because I already have all the three kind of developed. So start with all or any according to your convenience. But the first and foremost is everything has to be with the idea of getting in touch with that fourth part. With that, what we call as the aspiration. If I want to do anything, ask yourself, will I get one step closer to this part within me if I do this? If the answer is basically what we are asking is, will it make me the best possible person that I can be? If the answer is yes, you know that you are getting connected with the psychic. So the moment we get in touch with the psychic, why are we trying to do this? So that we can be the best version of ourselves. And there is a whole detailed approach which Mother and Sri Aurobindo have said, that how do we refine our body, our emotions and mind and get in touch with it? That is the entirety of integral education. But if you want to happen it with the child, this is what the mother says. The first thing to do in order to be able to educate the child is to educate oneself, to become conscious and master of oneself, so that one never sets a bad example to one's child. Why? Because it is above all through example that this type of an education becomes effective. To speak good words and to give wise advice to a child has very little effect if one does not oneself give him an example of what one teaches. You can't lecture a child that, oh, there is a soul inside you, and then that will actually terrify him. What is it that's sitting? But the way you speak to the child, the way you love him, the way you understand him, the way you see him inside out, the way you introduce the activities in a way which is interesting, engaging, structured, methodical way will communicate to the child that there is something so beautiful in my teacher. I just have to follow it. And he also blossoms. But there is an enormous amount of literature available where people have developed curriculum. The integral education gives you the approach. And based on it, you can develop your own curriculum too. But there are a lot of things which we can pick up. Definitely, in the future, probably if I get a chance to visit all of you, we can take up a few things, because this is the need of the hour. If our country has to reach a higher state, every one of the children in the country will have to discover their own genius. And that cannot happen unless and until we take the first step as teachers, as facilitators. We don't have to completely perfect ourselves, but we have to start, and that is sufficient. We will know how to make it happen with children.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to share something, Shivakumarji. So, like we have been doing this in kindergarten, like Padma ma'am always says, you connect the head and the heart, and, like your work is done with the child. And you can see, like, when the joy is there, like it resonates in the whole group. So I've just made up a simple formula of what you have said is like body, heart, intellect, genius. So I just,
in fact, the common term is head, heart, hands. Everybody gets it.
Yeah. So Padma always says like 3 H's. So she always keeps saying the 3 H's.
But remember, if you focus only on the 3 H, you could be creating monsters out of children. And that is where the most important thing is the 4th one, which is the soul element. I know we have been looking at syllabus-centered education to child-centered education, but in fact, from a child-centered education, it should move towards soul-centered education. Without that, only developing the mind, you'll be creating a mental monster or an emotional or a physical monsters, and there are plenty. And therefore, the most important component is the 4th component, which is the soul element. So 3H plus 1S.
Sir, may I?
Sure.
So we are saying about emotional body. Is there any method to know where a child is or where we ourselves are at emotional level? Like at present, I'm at this stage of emotional body, so I have to develop my emotional body a little more so that I can connect to the children and work more relevant with the children. If the child needs help, how can I help? Is there any method or anything?
Okay. So Lakshmi's audio was not clear, but kind of gathering how does one develop so that the emotional part in us becomes very strong and expresses everything in a beautiful, refined way. In people whom it has happened, it's a joy to be with them because they have so much warmth, love, and understanding. and it is definitely, it has to be developed. And there are actually ways in which this can happen. That is part of a longer and more detailed introduction to integral education. Definitely, we can make it happen with ourselves, and therefore we can make it happen with children too. But that will need a more elaborate introduction, which we will make it happen. So what we had today is only the tip of the iceberg. So there's a lot more detailed work that has been done. And integral education is one approach which gives you a framework where all the best practices of the world will find its right place, so that you don't bring the cart before the horse, because you know the sequential growth, and you will be able to beautifully convert any activity and do it in where it has to be done, how it has to be done, if you understand this education. But yes, there are very detailed approaches towards refining the vital. That's what we say. The emotional part is called vital by the mother, and there is a vital education. There's a whole education which helps us to refine and develop our emotions. And you're already doing it. All that you do in the name of art, music, dance, drama, they're all part of the emotional education. Somebody who has developed the aesthetic sense, who is developed a sense of responding to beauty in things, he will never ever express an ugly thought. He will never express an ugly gesture, isn't it? So you see how that vital development, the emotional development, actually helps you to come out with nothing but beauty. So mother says this beautifully, let nothing come out of you which is not beautiful. So everything that comes out of you, whatever it may be, and let it be the most beautiful thing on earth. That should be our aspiration, our attempt.
You mean the anger also should be beautiful?
That, or you can convert the anger, make it into an opportunity to understand the other person and meet the other person with more positivity and love. So it doesn't mean that we have to find a way of keeping the anger, but we transform the anger into something more beautiful. Now, all hatred, we have to transform hatred into love, because the force behind hatred and love is the same. So
because the anger might come out of love.
No, it doesn't come out of the love which comes from there. It comes out of a love which is a little twisted. See, the pure love is unconditional, but you add a little more expectation, demand, insistence, and when they are not met with, you get disappointed, you get angry. So what are we supposed to do? Let's refine. We don't have to get rid of love. That will be very dangerous. Get rid of the expectation, get rid of the limitation, drop the demand, find the joy in expressing the love. Then you will not be begging love with anybody else. You will find happy in just giving love to the world. We have not come here as beggars of love. There is already a fullness of love inside. When we discover it, there will not be any demand or insistence when we love. But that is the core of integral education, is to discover the source where there is an unlimitedness awaiting us. There is an unlimited wisdom. There is an unlimited positive emotions. There is an unlimited energy for the body, which is waiting to be discovered. And the mother says, well, we have to open the doors to it. So all the negative things are actually positive things which got a little twisted. That's it. We have to untwist it, and then the positive things will come out very clean. So there is no end, because the topic is so wonderful that we are looking at a new possibility, a new way of education, which will bring out the best from the children. And if that has to happen, remember that cannot happen unless and until we as teachers have brought out the best from within ourselves. It always starts with the teachers, the facilitators, and therefore Mother has said the first step is the preparation of the teachers to play the role of a facilitator. So with that, we will stop. A lot more are there, but probably in subsequent interactions, when I will even invite all of you to come here. All that we will work out. Now that you have had an introduction to integral education, well, we'll take it up more in the future.